had a great time as a driver, but to be honest, the satisfaction really came when you started to run the team. Life was a roller coaster with Colin, but at the end of the day, I think he will still go down as one of the most gifted of anybody that's ever been on WRC.
Well, it gives me great pleasure on a very special WRC Unfiltered to be joined by, and he normally doesn't forgive me for saying this, but the headmaster of rallying. Without Malcolm Wilson, the sport simply would not be what it is. So Malcolm, thank you very much for joining us. And we're here in the boardroom in M Sports, and I mean, everywhere, every single wall, absolutely covered in trophies. Really, best place to start is at the beginning, isn't it, I suppose? And before all of this, before all these trophies, before all the success of M Sport came, well, you going rallying in the early days. And we've seen some photographs on the wall of you as a very young lad, you know, being around the sport. Did you ever imagine that you'd achieve this? And I suppose, what was it that made you decide, you know, I want to go rallying?
I mean, it all started at a very early age. I was lucky to get involved in the sport from probably around 10-year-old, and obviously really got the bug. I sat in the back of a rally car one night and got the bug at an early age, and it was all I ever wanted to do, to be honest. And then I was in a fortunate position. I could build my own cars and what have you. So even before I was old enough to drive, I'd built a car ready so that I could do rallies as soon as I was 17. I was very lucky. I had success very early on in my career, and so I had a great platform to build on, and just went from there.
Whenever people nowadays think of Malcolm Wilson, and I think it's fair to say they think of M Sport, they think of all the achievements that the team has reached over the years, but it all really did start with you as a driver, and you were a top flight WRC driver, you know, driving for Ford, and you're being modest, you know, you see you pulling a face, but you were right at the business end, certainly with Ford and the Cosworth.
Yeah, I mean, most of my career was with Ford, for sure. And I did a lot of world rallies. I think the best I ever finished was third on GB, so never quite managed to get onto the top step of the podium. Had a reasonable amount of fastest times, and I think it's fair to say I had a reasonable amount of accidents as well.
Finland.
In quite a few places, probably most places, to be honest. And even at home in the Lake District, which makes it even more embarrassing. But true, and I think I'm probably the only guy in the world to have driven basically every single model of Escort, right from the Mark 1 1300 to a 2-litre BDA, right the way through to the Escort Cosworth to a World Rally car.
I think it's also fair to say when the competition was particularly stiff.
Yeah, I mean, if you think back to the real era, the Group B era was just an incredible time. In those days, the companies, the manufacturers, they made the decision to go WRC, and to be honest, budgets weren't even discussed. It was just the decision had been made.
I guess there comes a time in every driver's career when you reach that kind of turning point where you go, is this going to happen? Am I better off investing my time somewhere else in building cars, in building? So where was it where you decided, actually, I need to step away from, not step away, but move away to a degree from the driving perspective and more into the business, building cars and building a team? I've always set myself goals, and to be honest, probably even before I was 30, I'd made the decision that whatever happens, I would stop driving when I was 40, whether I'd achieved what I wanted to or not. And even at that point, you still had Anna Mikkel and Bjorn Voldegaard in their mid-40s, still winning certain types of world rallies. So I suppose in one sense it was a pretty bold decision, but yeah, as I say, I'd enjoyed business a lot. So the business was starting to evolve, and to be honest, then I think I was 39 and I decided to stop then, because I thought, right, this is where I really need to now concentrate my efforts. Then we went to Finland for the World Rally in 1996 with two Finnish drivers, Jarmo Kaitaletto and Harry Rovanperä, Kalli's father. And of course we came away from there with an incredible result, third overall, and in a private team. and Carlos was 6th, and I think Bruno Thierry was 8th in the factory cars. So that's then when negotiations then started with for us to take on running the World Championship team.
You worked with Ford for so long. I mean, well over, I guess, 15 years? 12 years, 15 years?
Yeah, it would be, because I was, for at least 15, probably more, yeah.
What would you say is have been the best moments, the key highlights?
I had a great time as a driver, but to be honest, the satisfaction really came when you started to run the team. First World Championship win on Acropolis. I never did it as a driver, but to win it as a team principal in your first season. And not only that, we had the 1-2, but then of course the real icing on the cake was winning the first World Championship for Ford back in 2006. To be honest, a really satisfying moment for me was being able to actually sign Sebastian. I was so determined once that Volkswagen decided to withdraw that I really wanted to get him into our car, because I was so proud, so happy with what the guys had actually done here. I could just tell that this was going to be an incredible car. But of course I wanted Sebastian to be happy, so he immediately flew straight back from Australia, and we met him in Wales, took him to Wales and tested the car, and then of course he sort of proclaimed himself to be happy with the car, which gave me a great vote of confidence as well. And then of course the difficult part started, the negotiating with Sebastian. I've always said that if he retires, then he can come and run my business, because I know that if he's running my business, he'll be in safe hands, that's for sure.
Well, that's the thing, because he's his own man. He doesn't have an agent or a manager working on his behalf. He does it all himself.
It's fantastic to deal with Sebastian. Not only is he the best driver that I've worked with, but he's the best negotiator. He knows exactly what he wants. It's the perfect package for a team principal.
But you've also worked with so many, key drivers who are so important to the history of the WRC. Colin McRae, Juha Kankinen, Carlos Sainz, Marcus Gronholm, the list just literally goes on. And every driver that's at the top flight now has come through these doors. That's a really, really special thing to have done.
You're right. You're right. I've had the world's best drivers, and I think the nice thing is I still got a good relationship with all of the top guys that have certainly won rallies and everything. So that is something that I'm really, really proud of. But to be honest, I really enjoy working with the youngsters. Obviously the Elvins, the Thierrys, the Oits. Because they're all different. Every single one of them is different, and you've got to find a way to try and get the best out of them. That's a challenge that I love. And when you do see them get that first win, and you can see, it's a magical feeling to see how the confidence levels goes from here to here.
The WRC would not be where it is without the investment in drivers that you've put in, and the scouting and everything else. What have you learned as a team boss and a manager of these young drivers that you've been able to take forward and go, I'm not going to do that again, I'll deal with this situation slightly differently next time?
A few of the guys have definitely had the Alex Ferguson hairdryer treatment.
Jari Matti Lepla.
On numerous occasions probably. As I say, every driver is different, and some drivers that will work with, some drivers it won't work with. So I think again it's just finding that balance, and everyone's different, so you can't give the same treatment to all the guys, because it doesn't work. So
I want to ask you about Colin McRae. What was it like working with Colin? Because give us some stories about him, because the man was an absolute legend.
Life was a roller coaster with Colin, but at the end of the day, I think he will still go down as one of the most gifted, natural talent and driver skill of anybody that has ever been on WRC. Colin had this reputation, being flamboyant and having accidents, and they thought he didn't have any mercy on a car. And in fairness, on the high-speed rallies and things like that, then obviously he didn't have a lot of mercy, because he knew that the car should stand up to that type of punishment, apart from his accident, should we say. But his real strong point for us was, not just for us, I think it was for me, was Colin, was that he had this incredible mechanical understanding as to how hard you could push a car on the difficult rallies. And if you look at all the difficult rallies that he won with us, Safari Rally 1999, only the third ever event for the Focus. Most difficult rally in the World Championship, hardest rally in the world to win. I remember Carlos Sainz saying to Uwe Anderson on the last day, Uwe, when is that bloody Focus going to break? It's not possible to bring a new car to this rally and win. But to be honest, a lot of that victory was down to Colin, because it's probably one of the few rallies that Colin won in the World Championship where he didn't actually set the fastest time, but also a mechanic as well. We used to have competitions with the technicians, and you would pitch our best technicians against him, and 9 times out of 10 he would be able to change a clutch quicker than some of the lead technicians. I remember once in New Zealand, the actual wastegate from the turbocharger broke off out of the manifold, and he came on the radio and told us, and I said, well, it's game over. The completely out exhaust gases coming out. Next thing we know, he's in the stage, gets his third fastest time. Car arrives at the service, and he just used stainless steel lock wire, wrapped it all around the wastegate, plugged the wastegate back into the manifold. It was still losing some exhaust gases. But I don't think anybody else could have done that. When I looked at it and saw what he'd done, and the temperature and everything he would have been working with to try and wrap this wire around, and to even think about doing that, I would think there's no other driver would have even attempted to do that job. But that, again, was Colin. And
it's ironic that you say Colin McRae had that mechanical empathy and mechanical sympathy for a car, when what he's famous for, obviously other than his speed and his flamboyance, was for having some fairly hefty accidents as well.
Yeah, he had a lot of big offs, and a lot of those came on the particularly fast rallies, the Finlands, the Swedens, and he never got the result there that he probably should have had, because he had the speed, but then that was the area where he wasn't as strong, the odd mistake on the high speed stuff, and then of course the consequences are pretty horrendous, as we saw some pretty badly damaged cars.
What driver would you say that hasn't won a championship deserved it the most?
I think that it's very simple. Jari-Matti Latvala, there's no question. Okay, he probably gave me more heartache and got me frustrated more.
Cost you a few bob.
Cost me a few bob, got me more frustrated than probably any other driver. But, Jari will definitely go down as the quickest driver with the most fastest times to not win a World Rally Championship. And it's for me, it's a great shame, because he had all the attributes to be able to do it, but it's never happened for him.
Would you agree that it was just he wanted it too much? He was thinking about it too much?
I think just the excitement and the emotion just played too much of a part, and even though you could say, look, you just calm down, just settle for third, he could never actually adapt to that sort of situation that he needed to be. Always wanted to be the fastest driver, which, as we know, he's got an incredible amount of fastest times.
What do you think about Oyt Tanak? Because there was at one point where it was going to be kind of, Oyt, this whole rallying game isn't for you anymore, fella.
There was more than one occasion where he probably thought he wasn't going to be driving in the WRC. The great thing about Oyt is he's always had the speed. In one sense, he's a little bit like Jari in the sense that he's always had the speed. But I genuinely, I touched on it before. I believe, the big turning point was spending that 12 months with Seb, and just really appreciating that you don't need to be fastest on every stage.
One driver we've certainly seen, again, that you're very close to and has got an awful lot to thank you for, is Elfyn Evans. And we've seen him, you touched on it earlier, is once you get that first win, once you start to get the ball rolling, things change. And he's gone to Toyota, and his situation has changed, and he's found some pace. And he was able to take everything he learned from M Sport and apply it at Toyota. And he's starting to get going now, isn't he, Elfyn? What do you think about the future of Elfyn Evans?
Elvin's got a really strong future now. Again, he learnt a lot as well from being with Seb. And, you know, he took a big step. He had a really strong Monte Carlo, then a fantastic Sweden. So good confidence level. I think it's just knowing Elvin like I do, it's a great shame that the season's had to be reduced because of COVID, because I think he was just starting to build that momentum. And then, of course, now there's been this 6-month gap. He came back, did a strong rally in Estonia, bearing in mind that I think it was still a strong result, because if you look last year, he had a heavy landing, broke his back. This year on the rally a few weeks ago, then he had a really high-speed accident.
Yep.
So there would be a lot playing on his mind on the actual event. So, probably people were expecting a little bit more, but I think it's a good, solid platform for him to build on.
If you had to choose a driver now to sit in an M Sport Ford Fiesta, and a driver in their prime, okay, would you have Sebastian Loeb or Sebastian Ogier sat there?
It would have to be Sebastian Ogier.
Why?
I had so much respect for Sebastian Loeb, and don't get me wrong, a lot of people don't know, but I actually had him here. He tested one of our cars back in 2004, I think. After spending those 2 years working with Sebastian, and the way that he does everything, the way that he managed every single thing himself, and the combination of him and Julian, how they complement each other, the professionalism, the way they work. I mean, just the simple things like Sweden Rally, everybody's got their heavy winter jacket, and Seb's there in his little lightweight jacket. I said, Seb, where's your heavyweight jacket? No, it's weight. I take my lightweight jacket. If I go off the road and make a mistake, it's my fault. And if I get cold, I get cold. But that's a sort of detail that he went into to make sure that he was prepared. And, when you're doing things like that mentally, you're teaching yourself that you're absolutely doing everything possible to win. And that's exactly what him and Julian did.
Well, listen, Malcolm, it's been absolutely brilliant. Thank you for giving us so much time and a proper insight into the history of M Sport, your experiences with the drivers, and of course, a little look into the future as well.
Thank you. But I think we've only touched the tip of the iceberg, to be honest.